Do good and do well. Is there a difference when you're asked that question? What if I phrased it differently and said that to do good, you have to be doing well? Now, what about these phrases? Competition for higher grades in our schools doesn't create the skills needed to succeed because talk and content don't change behavior. Action does. Hey, everybody. Dr. Jones here, creator of Seeing to Lead, a podcast designed to help address the problems that leaders are facing every day. And this week, I talked to Bill Coplin, who has spent decades, yes, decades, in education. While he's been at the higher education level, his ideas and theories are not just that. He has spent his career implementing them in all levels of education. And in this episode, he shares his theories with us about education and the problem of it being a stress machine. He talks about students not being motivated. But most importantly, he talks about how to address these through his program called Skills Win. This is a program that doesn't just focus on content, it focuses on getting students the skills they need to be successful rather than just being able to call themselves educated. In other words, education for the know-how and not just the knowledge. We also talk about a book he wrote last year called The Path to Equity: Inclusion in the Kingdom of Liberal Arts. Because if we help students do well, they can't help but do good. The thing is, it takes a change in our thinking. So I'm sure you're going to find a ton of value in this week's episode. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a rating and review. The reviews help the show more than you can know. And then do a little bonus. I'd personally appreciate it if you'd share it with somebody or on social media with your greatest takeaway. Well, enough from me. Let's hear from Bill Coplin on Seeing to Lead.
You can't change the system, but you can change little things. Then if you change little things, it'll become big things. Because change is difficult. That's what Machiavelli said. It's true. And it's very, very difficult to do it at a system level.
Dr. Chris Jones here, and welcome to Seeing to Lead, a show designed to help leaders increase their ability to effectively support, engage, and empower their staff through intentional practices so that they create an environment where everyone reaches their greatest level of success. On Seeing to Lead, communication rules the day as we hear voices from both teachers and leaders in an effort to examine perspectives, highlight misunderstandings, and provide steps to ultimately bridge the gap between what teachers need and provide through thoughtful dialogue. This show is about amplifying voices, creating understanding, and providing information to help everyone continually improve. I want to personally thank you for taking the time. Now, let's get to getting better. Bill Coplin is an award-winning educator, author, and social innovator with an impressive academic journey spanning 6 decades. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in social sciences from Johns Hopkins University in 1960. Followed by a Master of Arts in 1962 and a Ph.D. in International Relations in 1964 from American University. From 1977 to 2021, Copeland was the director and professor of the Public Affairs program at the Maxwell School of Syracuse University and the College of Arts and Sciences. Copeland started his academic career as a professor at Wayne State University in 1960. His dedication and scholarship led to his appointment as an associate professor in 1967 and, ultimately, the granting of tenure in 1968. In 1969, Copeland transitioned to Syracuse University, where he continued his research and innovative educational strategies. His contributions to academia led to his appointment as a full-time professor at Syracuse University in 1975, a remarkable achievement at the age of 36. Over the past 6 decades, Copeland's scholarly endeavors have encompassed diverse fields, including international relations, public policy, political risk analysis, social science, education, and citizenship. In addition to 110 publications, Copeland has taken action in many areas. In 1979, he co-founded Political Risk Services Profit Center in Frost & Sullivan Incorporated, which provided forecasts of political and economic conditions in 100 countries until 2000.
His work has impacted all levels from Syracuse University, the city of Syracuse, Onondaga County, the state of New York, the U.S. federal government, and international affairs. Meantime, Copeland has increasingly focused his efforts toward reforming high school and college education, leading to the creation of Skills Win. As anybody that listens to this show can guess, I'm super excited to speak with Bill today because he not only brings a vast amount of experience to the conversation, but also the critical lens of higher education, something I haven't had on the show too many times. So, Bill, after that long introduction and all those accolades and all these great things you've done, welcome to Seeing to Lead.
Glad to be here.
So, we mentioned in the introduction there, Skills Win. And I don't know if the listeners know about that or anything, but that's critical in today's educational environment. So let's talk Skills Win. Could you tell the listeners about it, what it is, why it is?
Skills Win grew out of my freshman course in the major I developed, which was to prepare students to do well and do good. So when I originally started it, I didn't focus on skills that much, but it's to prepare students to do well and do good. Well, that means skills. So in the 80s, I started to focus on skills, and I had my students practice skills. And the major I ran was very, very successful. It's now one of the biggest in the social sciences. In 2004, I wrote a book called 10 Things Employers Want You to Learn in College. And those 10 things, there's really 38 skills, but I put them in 10 groups. And I started to try and get the skills into not just my courses, but other courses and also in the high schools. This all comes from my initial dissatisfaction with college. When I went to college, I thought I was going to go to college to get a career, find a job, have skills. But my first class was to study Chaucer. And I realized that professor was a scholar who specialized in medieval English or whatever. And I couldn't really be mad at him because that was his love. However, I was mad at the institution for what I call bait and switch. Come to college and get a job, study Chaucer. And I've been on the work path since I was 17 years old. Now, it wasn't always on the war path, but I ended up in a position where I had power to be on that war path. And I created a major to correct that, what I consider a really thing in higher education, which is that it's a trick. And that most students who come to college think like I thought, except for a small group who are more sophisticated, who don't even need to go to college. Anyway, I started to figure out how to change this. So I made the changes at Syracuse, and then I started working in the city of Syracuse. And I wrote several things arguing that we need to provide students with skills. And how do you provide students with skills? Well, you give them experiences. You don't have them talk and reflect, which is the business of the scholar, talk and reflect. If we want all our students to become monks, then the traditional liberal arts model would work. Now, unfortunately, I might be rambling here, so you might want to stop me.
No, you're good. I'm going to have a question for you in a second, but you're good. Go ahead.
So, unfortunately, the college then set the K through 12 curriculum. K through 12 has suffered from an underinvestment in vocational education and career development to prepare kids to go to college. And the students, and I always ask myself when I was in high school, why am I learning this? Then I'm in college, and why am I learning this? And so I felt like I had to make a change, and it's quite a revolutionary change. However, I think it's happening anyway. I call it the skills revolution. It's happening actually against the will of the elites running higher ed and even K through 12. They still want to create the educated person, which I have no idea what that even means. The educated person. Well, what it means is be like them, to be like they. which is not useful. And it's also, when you start thinking about it, raises an equity question. 100% of the people have to be educated according to the criteria of the elites running the schools. Is that what you're talking about? And that's just nonsense. And the unfortunate thing, it hurts the lower classes of students who don't have parents who socialize them into the college thing and higher. It hurts the people, I call them commoners, the commoner. It's not. And unfortunately, 80% of the people going to college are commoners. And 90% in the entire world are commoners. They want an education for know-how, not for knowledge for its own sake. So Skills Win was set up to provide that. So there's 10 skill sets, starting with taking responsibility, which is really sort of a skill set. And then there's 4 sub-skills I have under it. Motivate yourself, which I think is the biggest problem with students, is they're not motivated. And it's because, well, they're growing up. You're not going to be motivated. But also the system's not providing them useful things. And then I have this control stress. I think the stress thing is a big problem in the education system. It's like creating a stress machine, and you need to control. And then I have manage your time and budget your money as taking responsibility. So you can see the level of the skills are quite clear and down to earth, that everybody needs them. I wrote the Skills Win Skills so the students would understand. When skill sets are written, it's usually the professors. It's in the language of the professor, like competencies and all these big words that they don't even know what they mean, actually.
I've got so many questions for you because you bring up some really good things that I think I'd love to unpack a little bit for people.
Okay.
One of the things I do want to highlight, going back to the very beginning, is you and I seem to be somewhat kindred spirits in this fashion. That you had an issue with college, so now you've become involved in college, or you became involved in college to fix that issue. So I love that, and I think we need more of that in education. You know, we sit around and we talk a lot about the problems of education or the ills of the system, and we are very hesitant to actually step out of the box and make change. And when personally I'm trying to make changes, that's when I run into the most pushback. That's when I get the hardest time from people, when I'm trying to change from that system you're talking about.
Yeah, and just the minor thing is, you can't change the system, but you can change little things. Then if you change little things, it'll become big things. Because change is difficult. That's what Machiavelli said. It's true. And it's very, very difficult to do it at a system level. But you can do it in your classroom. And you can, I tell teachers, do whatever, get tenure, do whatever they want, and then help the students. And your job should be to help the students, not to just go through the other stuff to keep them off your back. And I think most teachers, because I think teachers are in chains. You know, they're controlled by even Washington and the state of New York and the school board and the principal. But when you're in that class with the kids, they don't know what you're doing. You can do what you want as long as you get them to pass the tests they need to pass. And when you're observed, you play the game. Follow what I'm saying? So it's almost a guerrilla activity you have to undertake.
Well, so it's interesting that you say as long as you get them to pass the test and then people are happier, or these elites are happy. But you talked about stop talking and reflecting on these knowledge-focused activities and on this content. With today, with the testing today, the standardized assessments today that students have to pass, I would imagine that when people hear this, they're going to say, well, what are you talking about? They've got to know these things. So can you tell us a little bit more about how that sits in comparison to what should be done? Because when you're talking about skills, or at least this is what I got, make sure if I'm wrong, correct me on this. I want to make sure I have this right. It's not an either or thing. You're not teaching skills or content. It's an It's more of an and thing. You're teaching useful knowledge. I loved you saying education for know-how and not knowledge. Is that what you're talking about? It's an and, not an either or. And how does that sit in a class?
Yeah, no, you have to cover the content, whatever that means. But the way to cover it is by giving them exercises that where they absorb the content, maybe, but they develop skills in doing it. So, for example, you're teaching a history or Constitution. I actually created a Constitution simulation where the kids played Benjamin Franklin and various, and then they had to learn enough content to play the role. What they got out of it was playing the role and talking to each other, thinking about the process, trying to manipulate the process. And I think you could use simulation a lot, role playing. I'm a big fan of teamwork and project management and problem solving. I think the content can be put in that. I also 13% of New York State students don't get their diploma because they can't place the regents. That's 13%. That's a big percent. I think, really, the regents test, these big tests, I don't think they have it in Massachusetts. I don't know. Do they have?
We don't have the regents, but we have the MCAS.
Yeah.
It's the assessment system, which is a graduation requirement, but it's almost the same thing. I think the regents is more comprehensive, though.
Yeah, and so my argument was, I've always said, the standard for the regents should be, you take the 10 regents in a room and you give them the test. And then whatever the average is the pass there. Because I don't think they can pass the test, actually.
Yeah.
Because what are they going to remember what Mesopotamia was about? 40 years later. So what are they doing? It's a joke. And they're thinking of getting rid of regents or making it optional. I think the testing is a big driving force. And it goes, I don't think it's useful. I don't think statewide testing is useful.
Supporting your teachers and students seems to be a struggle. They just don't seem to be engaged. You wish they would take more responsibility for their learning and culture of the building, but they just don't seem to be empowered enough to do it. So, my question is, have you checked out the book Seeing to Lead yet? It's all about creating a true educational experience where learning, growth, leadership, and community take center stage. Full of strategies and resources, Seeing to Lead is about attaining that goal by employing a model that supports, engages, and empowers all individuals to become leaders themselves. Pick up a copy today at seeingtolead.com. That's seeingtolead.com. Remember, you don't become a leader and then decide you need to support and recognize others more than yourself. It is the moment you realize it's about supporting and recognizing others that you become a leader. seeingtolead.com.
So let me ask you this. With the standardized testing, is that something that needs to go away to make meaningful change in the current system the way it is and the way it's playing out in the schools?
Well, see, now we got to get realistic about what's feasible. So it will die, I can tell you, but it could take another 100 years. It's not going to die right now. Are you frozen? I think the teachers can get away with developing skills and still do the content that they need for the tests. But the tests are a problem, or anti-skills in general. Tests don't promote teamwork, for example.
You talk about the scores going down. I have a big question about why that happens, or I'd love to see if we can understand why that happens. Wrap that in with the students not being motivated, that problem that every school USA is complaining about. And then a statement you made earlier that really hit home for me, because this is a major problem in schools today as well. The idea of education being a stress machine and how that's a problem. We're looking at elevated rates of stress, anxiety, depression, and unfortunately, student attempted suicides. Are all of these connected? Is all this, more so maybe than just the loose connection that we could draw?
No, I think the education system, it does two things. It takes the students who feel that getting in a good college is the key to their life. And then they get into this competition with each other. So then they become totally grade conscious. Their operational method is maximum grade with minimum work. How can I get the highest grade and do the least work? And the kids that succeed do that. That's quite remarkable, actually. They tend to do it all, and they always succeed because they're good managers and they have the natural talent to do it. But they're also in huge stress because they're afraid they're not going to get an A. So I think the stress is really bad. I think for kids that are poor readers, I mean, there are kids graduating high school without can't read. I know that's happening. So those kids that can't get with the plan and compete for grade, think about them, how stressed they are. And then I feel, and I'd be wrong, that this business about make the world better, social justice, lays on 15-year-olds the need to fix the world. So they get angry and they have frustrated because they can't fix the world. They should be told to fix the world. They maybe should be told to fix their school or to help their family or to help their church. That's what you should be told. But they're not told that. They're given all this stuff. And then I know that this is an ideological cultural warfare thing, but the kids who come to college have that bug. And I put it, do you want to do good or do well? And if they say do good, I know they're under stress. What they should say, well, I want to do well enough to do good. I don't want to just be chasing money. That I got. But they don't say that. And then I say to them, well, what kind of job are you going to get? And then they say, yeah, I thought about that. So they're living this. They're trying to meet the expectations of the system, God, and they can't be God. And so that added to, at the same time, they're competing for higher grades so they can get into a better graduate school where they can get some kind of, Dean's Award. It's a stress machine. And then they have everything else going on in their life, their friends, all that kind of stuff. It's very stressful. But I think the competitiveness that's in a lot of the schools generates the stress.
So, when you talk about competitiveness, it brings me back to something that you had mentioned earlier, really early on when you were talking about the university experience and how these elites that talk about knowledge for the sake of knowledge and how everybody should be like them and it becomes an equity issue. You wrote a book last year or published a book last year, The Path to Equity and Inclusion in the Kingdom of Liberal Arts. And something that stood out to me when I was reading about the book at first was you mentioned the bait and switch piece that you've already talked about here. So could you tell the listeners a little bit about the book? I think that's something they may want to pick up because we talk a lot about equity in our educational system today. But sometimes I think we're trying to hit it from the wrong direction. I think we kind of understand what it is, but in an attempt to fix, I think we may be misdefining it. So could you help us out with that a little bit?
Yeah, I think equity means to me that everybody in the system, every student can develop the skills to be whoever they were capable of being. Not whoever they want to be, but who are capable of being, the old Army thing. And the system is set up to have kids compete for high grades. So it doesn't really produce the behaviors necessary to succeed. The other thing about the way equity issues are taught, they're taught to have conversations about them and think about how to the world better. They're never about how you could be a better person, how you could follow equity in your personal relationships. It's not about actions you can take. It's about discussing theories of how to make the world better. And so the only thing you can do from it is to feel bad. So I don't know if I'm making sense here. So it's an abstraction. I mean, it first started with racial incidents going on. And there is students are still, they come from different backgrounds, and because other people are different, they tend to be hostile to them and express their hostility. We call that racism, and the other kind of isms. Now, my thought was, well, we want them to stop doing that. We want them to treat people well, right? Well, how does talking about it or reflecting on it and thinking about the past lead to that? I don't think talk changes behavior. I don't think content changes behavior. Experience changes behavior. What I would do and have done, I send kids into the community, into the schools, to try and help kids in the schools get the skills I think they need. But at the same time, my students going into schools, they're acting in a way, they're dealing with social justice questions and racist questions because they're in that school and it's right in their face. And the first thing you're going to have to do is explore why they have those stereotypes when they got in there. And they're all very nervous. They're going, it's basically rich kids going into these schools, not all rich, but it's completely different than their experience, unless they happen to come from an inner city school, which some do at Syracuse University, not all, but not a lot. Do you follow what I'm saying? So this gets back to content does not change behavior. Experience changes behavior. So discussing ideas, which is part of the concept of the kingdom of liberal arts, we will discuss ideas, we will explore things. In the meantime, some of the professors are quite rigid and really on it, which then creates this question, what's going on? So I wrote the book because I want schools to give, colleges to give experience to students to get skills. And nothing else matters unless you're talking about the specific subject matter area. You want to be a chemist or something like that. That's different. I'm talking about the general purpose of undergraduate education, which is a rite of passage, which is to change somebody from a child to an adult. That's what it's supposed to be doing. The way it has to be done is through skills and experience, not sitting around arguing over Rousseau's theories or Marx or whatever, or not learning some very esoteric research by some professor. And so you have this treatment that doesn't lead to what I think an undergraduate education should do, is to make somebody able to be a good citizen and to feed themselves. Those are the overall goals, So now what has happened is, my argument in the book is that this liberal arts thing, even when students aren't in liberal arts programs, because half those programs were professional school programs, have half liberal arts in it anyway, that these liberal arts programs have had a very negative impact. And on the other hand, where do students learn in college? From their jobs. A student works in a bookstore, winds up being a bookstore manager after he graduates. Why? Well, because it's the only thing that knows how it happened. I think there's a need for experience. And then how do they get experience? They join fraternities and sororities. Well, fraternities and sororities, first of all, kids in sororities and fraternities generally have higher GPAs anyway. So it doesn't hurt their, quote, academic scoring. And any president of a fraternity or sorority is going to get a lot of job offers because they're handling a $1 million budget. And they're also handling the pressure from the university, do this, do that, do this. I mean, it's like a full-time job. So there's all these student activity experiences that the students are in. They devote more time to that than they do to their studies. And of course, the kingdom doesn't like that. I like it because they're learning from those experiences. I want to get the kids out of it. There's 120 credits, right, to get your degree. Well, I think 30 of them should be based on experience credit. And actually, there are schools that do that. Co-op schools, they send kids away for a semester. Well, I think what's happening is the experience on the campus is overtaking the academics, except for a few kids that are going to be scholars. Too bad for them because they're not going to get a job. But That's okay. That's their problem. But I think the experience is what drives the education. And as a result, the number of hours students spend on school outside of class has dwindled. Technically, it is for every hour in class, you spend 2 hours out of class. Okay. So for a 3-credit course, that's 9 hours a week. Well, they don't spend 9 hours a week.
Right.
They spend like 3.5 hours, right? Or 4 hours. So the lack of engagement is well documented. And it has been going down. Why? Because the kids are doing other stuff. My feeling is, well, that's good. They're doing other stuff. But the academics could make it more rigorous and more trained, more focused, what they do. I don't know, I'm going in a rat hole here, but so I think it's happening in high school stuff. So my grandkids are in high school, and of course, they get all A's. They don't care about their schoolwork. What they care is they work, put it on a play, theater, the whole theater thing, which just gobbles up their time, takes away from studying, but is actually more beneficial than going to class. Because first of all, they're learning how to deal with people, which is the number one skill we learn. The number one thing we want kids to, by the time they're adults, is to be able to work. And so if they are on the theater team, they're learning to work with people.
The thing that just keeps ringing true to me, and every once in a while as you're explaining this, and for those people that didn't catch it the first time, this book that you wrote, I would recommend people get it to hear more about this, but The Path to Equity, Inclusion in the Kingdom of Liberal Arts. As you talk about things, you're always saying, well, this is the way you see it, or this is the way we should be looking at it. It's really a mindset shift. When you talk about the idea of, 30 credits out of the 120 should be activity-based %, but there's people that would be against that because it's got to be academic. When you talk about skills over content, you had to add the caveat, well, unless you're going to be a chemist or something, of course you need that content. But that's the answer for the whole thing. Of course you need these things. But the mindset is so closed that to enter into the discussion, to even think about the actions, is a tough road to hoe. So, it's that. But one of the things I'm wondering, you have all this experience in education. If you weren't in education, who, not what would you be?
Oh, I don't want to be a shrink. I always wanted to be a shrink.
Tell us a little more about.
I didn't want to go to med school. So I am sort of a shrink as an advisor to my students. And the conversations I have with them, I go right to the point. Do you want to do well or do good? And then why? And then that opens up everything else. So I like to help people. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help. I'm a rescuer.
Good for you. Good for you. The last question, we're running out of time. I asked that question, then I have one more that I ask every guest that comes on before we sign off. What's the most important piece of advice you could give to leaders as they work to better support, engage, and empower those they serve?
To actually talk to them, listen to them, to talk to them. I think that's a huge problem. It's like an echo chamber. The chancellors go and meet nationally, then they talk each other into stuff, and they never ask the students. And the faculty designs courses. You think they would ask students what they think? Should there be a course on this or that? I think you need to talk to the people you're serving. And one of the things I do at Syracuse, I use undergraduate TAs who took the course the semester before, and they help me teach the next semester. And they tell me, that PowerPoint's got too much stuff on it. Take care of it all. Oh, okay, you're right. How did I do today? Well, you went on too long. By getting close to the people you're serving, you will serve them better. And I think they have tremendous institutional procedures that prevent. They have committees, they have this and that, and they're always fighting over content. And of course, the fight is over my content's better than your content. No, they should take foreign language. Well, no, but they should take science. And so munch them to the kids and say what do you need, and that my overall messages should connect to their students and do what their students need, and also take care of all the stuff put on their back by the institution, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And put another way, the best form of education is apprenticeship, right? You know that. Everybody knows that. The problem is there's a numbers. You can't have 75 apprentices. So then you get to this system that's evolved over years, which is like a machine that serves almost nobody, because there's such variation among your students. Each is an individual. I call it the individuality of the learner. That has to be recognized. And it's not recognized because you're in a system to deal with the 30, not with each one. And I know it sounds like a tremendous task of how do I help each one? Well, why don't you talk to them, see how they're doing, and be flexible in how they adapt. And so the answer is leaders need to talk and listen at a time. I think if we take one step at a time and do little things, we could have tremendous change in the schools. I've seen it with I train 100 teachers who teach my freshman course. And I've shown them how to do it, and I know it works. And it's the little things you do to promote teamwork, getting along with people, communicating clearly. These are all skills. Put another way, the teacher has to be a coach, not necessarily a teacher. I don't consider myself, I tell my students I'm not a professor, I'm a coach, and call me Coach Copeland. So they call me Coach Copeland, blah, 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 blah. So they feel I'm helping, as opposed to Professor Copeland, are you going to give me an A or not?
Right. That's so perfectly said. The idea of drawing the parallel between coaching and the mental piece or the framework that accompanies coaching versus a professor, and the idea of consistent small steps lead to big change. You know, Bill, you said, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. You've said a lot with a really good perspective. I'll obviously include the link to this book that I've talked about here, and I'll include your website there, the link to your website in the show notes. Is there any other way that people could get in touch with you if they want to connect, or is that just sufficient?
My email is wdcopeland, Coplin, at syr.edu. And if they go to my website, which is billcopeland.com, there's a contact sheet which gives you my email. And I always answer my email.
You know, before you know it, you'll be introducing all these different skills into a classroom, because that's what the kids will be motivated for. And if you that into the regular content, and my listeners can't see me using air quotes, if you tie it into the regular content, then they're going to be engaged in the content. And it's my thought, my theory, my prediction that your students will do better in content scores because they're more engaged overall. They're not tuning you out. And all you have to do is, when I was in the classroom, I used to do projects and debates and mock trials and things like that. Kids will work hours outside of the classroom on something that they're engaged in. And that's all you need to see. If you present stoichiometry in an exciting way that students are engaged with, they'll spend hours working to understand the concept and do something with it, rather than if you're just teaching it to them in the classroom and then assigning them homework to go study it on their own.
Exactly. No, I totally. And yet when I used to walk around high school, I visited them all. You look in the classroom, they're all like picture in my book, in my book with everybody asleep.
Yeah.
Then I go to the library and there's like 5 kids sitting at a table and they're really engaged. Now, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're doing a project because we got it, blah, 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 blah. But meanwhile, they were so engaged, and it contrasted so much with the classroom where the teacher's telling them, oh, and that made me realize it. And engagement is the key. Is how do you get engagement? It's not easy, but if you don't have engagement, then you're not learning. Very simple.
I was going to say, I couldn't think of a better way to leave that if you don't have engagement, you don't have learning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap, but not the end. Next step, be sure to take action on something you heard here today. Hey, thanks for listening to the Seeing to Lead podcast. If you would like to connect for any reason, email me at drchrissj@gmail.com or catch me on Twitter at Dr. C.S. Jones. If you've gotten any value from the Seeing to Lead podcast today, you can help me and other leaders create a world-class environment through a teacher-centric approach by subscribing to the show, leaving an honest rating and review, and sharing this episode on social media with your most valuable takeaway. Also, one last thing. Have you had a chance to pick up my latest 5-star rated book yet? Grab your copy of Seeing to Lead anywhere you buy books or at seeingtolead.com. That's seingtolead.com, where you can learn more and continue to improve. Now go have a successful week.